Lupin, whatever you do, don't read this book. Okay? I'm Carl T. Rogers, the storylosopher, teaching you how to write your screenplays like a director. Hot take, I think Save the Cat by Blake Snyder is bad screenwriting advice. By the end of this review, you'll know the strengths and weaknesses of this book, in my opinion, and whether or not you should actually buy it if you don't already own it. And if you do already have it, if you should keep it. Of course, I love cats. My wife and I have 2 cats. I would definitely want you to save the cat, but I do not think that the book, Save the Cat, is really the last book on screenwriting that you'll ever need. Now you might be asking yourself, Save the Cat is such a popular screenwriting book. I mean, it's been around for decades, and everybody talks about it, and everybody recommends it. Why would you, Carl, not recommend Save the Cat? Why do you think it's bad screenwriting advice? Well, I don't think everything in the book is bad, but I do think there's some things that are kind of like, especially if it's the first book that you read, kind of some bad takeaways, can give you some bad habits. And while there's definitely things that I think are good in the book, because, I mean, I still have it, you know, and I still reference it occasionally, but I really think you should take his kind of Blake Snyder's storytelling lessons in this book with a grain of salt. And I, of course, mean no disrespect to memory of Blake Snyder. He's since passed after he wrote this book, and it's been very influential. I mean, I remember reading this as an undergraduate film student and later as a graduate film student, so it's definitely still really popular. In spite of its popularity, I think it's a little overhyped sometimes. There's 5 things in particular that I think you need to watch out for, whether you've read this book before or not. The first thing that I think you should be aware of with Save the Cat, the very concept of saving the cat. If you've read the book before, then you know the very opening and where he gets the title is this concept of you need to have your character do something really nice so that the audience likes them at the very beginning of the film. You know, he says, I call it the Save the Cat scene. It's the scene where we meet the hero and the hero does something, like saving the cat, that defines who he is and makes us, the audience, like him. Well, I mean, sometimes this can be good advice, but I really think that the word likable is the problem here. While sometimes your character might need to be likable, in other cases your character needs to be empathizable, basically. You need to write that opening set of scenes in such a way that your audience will empathize with that main character, even if they don't necessarily like him or her. So you might have a character that performs some kind of noble deed, like saving a cat from a tree, and that might be the right way that your story can use this device. But maybe... See, he knocked the book out of my lap. He doesn't like it either. Maybe your character needs to do something where the audience is not going to like what they do, but we understand why that character does it, and therefore we're able to kind of empathize with that character. And I think that's more important than them being quote-unquote likable. The second thing is, I think the Save the Cat books really help perpetuate this kind of idea of a cookie-cutter plot structure, so to speak. You know, Save the Cat and Blake Snyder is all very big on the whole beat sheets and having certain acts occur through certain page ranges, and then you have to hit this specific story beat on this specific page. For example, he says on page 78, talking about his beat sheet, the break into 2 happens on page 25. I've been in many arguments. Why not page 28? What's wrong with 30? Don't, please. In a 110-page screenplay, it happens no later than 25. Now, he admits that this is his own kind of writing quirk, that when he's reading a screenplay, he'll actually flip to that page to see if they're actually hitting that kind of beat that he's come up with. And on the one hand, I understand that he's probably read a lot of screenplays like I have, where you just read and nothing seems to happen. You know, you get well past what should have been Act 1 going into Act 2, and nothing's happening. It's like, when is the story going to actually start? But it's kind of like this extreme reaction to where it has to happen on this page, and otherwise your script is bad. And I really think that's, you know, it's so formulaic and it's such a bad, like, no, don't prescribe page numbers. Once again, it should be kind of like a good guideline, especially if this is the type of way that your brain thinks. It can be helpful, but at the end of the day, I think it makes some writers, especially if they're not very experienced yet, it can make them do kind of like a paint-by-numbers type screenplay, and that's something I think writers, especially new writers, should avoid. You do need to make sure that you have the catalyst happening near the beginning, and it all needs to make sense. You do need to have structure, but you should not have a formula. Okay? Problem number 3 that I have with Save the Cat, you probably will not hear this anywhere else, but it's one of his immutable screenplay physics laws. Okay? And he calls this one double mumbo jumbo. The official definition for double mumbo jumbo is basically there can only be one type of magical power or event in any given story so that you are still able to suspend the audience's disbelief. It's kind of like, you know, in Star Wars you have the Force, and in Harry Potter you have magic, but you shouldn't have a story where you have the Force and magic. So you should not combine those two things into one story, because then it's kind of like you're overwhelming the audience's sense of disbelief with something supernatural. He uses the film Signs as his example of something that breaks the double mumbo jumbo law, and he says this on page 127. I'd say proof of an alien intelligence outside our solar system sort of trumps all discussions about faith in God, don't you think? But M. Night Shyamalan asks us to juggle both, and it's a mess. The minute the aliens arrive, the problem of Mel Gibson's crisis of faith is, well, ridiculous. You want to see a miracle? Look out the window. Aliens have landed. What M is asking us to balance in our minds is a debate about whether or not God and little green men exist. God and aliens don't mix, because it's two sets of different kinds of magic. Alright, so I get where he's coming from with this, but it's just, it's bad philosophy, okay? That's not how, philosophy works, and there's a couple of reasons why. Okay, let me lay it out for you. This kind of idea assumes that God and aliens, or something else in a story that would be considered abnormal or supernatural, are mutually exclusive phenomena. In the same way, you could almost say something that, like, The Exorcist breaks the law of double mumbo jumbo, because you have demonic possession and then you have God who saves someone from the demonic possession. So it's like, oh, you have gods and you have demons. We can't have both of those. Therefore, we have broken the laws of screenplay physics. And it's like, no, those are not mutually exclusive. In his explanation using Signs, Blake Snyder also kind of breaks things down to where he associates God as some kind of physical phenomena that is just weird or inexplicable. He's like, aliens are weird and inexplicable, and so is God. Whereas aliens would be physical and God is immaterial. So you're mixing two different metaphysical categories here, okay? And that bothers me. And yeah, there's just metaphysical problems. It assumes that the supernatural or anything outside the physical universe is basically, no matter what type it is, all of it is on the same level of incredulity, and therefore having more than one type in your story makes your story fall apart. Whether he made this type of metaphysical mix-up in his personal life, or whether he was just saying that it applies to storytelling in particular, I'm not sure. But if you check out the article that I wrote in the description, I go into a lot more detail about why this kind of concept doesn't make sense, and why it might make sense depending on the story you're trying to tell, so the double mumbo jumbo can work in a specific story, but you definitely shouldn't apply it to all stories, and especially not to your own philosophy of life and philosophy of religion and things like that. It's just not how philosophy works. That's not how theology works. So that's why I say you're only going to hear this from me, because it's kind of my pet peeve. Not a pet like you, Lupin. You're a good type of pet. Lupin's down here beside my chair. Another problem that I have with Save the Cat, and this especially bugged me when I was a young undergrad in film school, is this whole act break. Blake Snyder is always break into 2, break into 3, and here's our act break. It's like, what is an act break? You can't just say, and then you have your break into 2. What are we breaking into? What is an act break? I understood, that there's basic act structure in a story, but the way he described it and wrote it just really confused me. And now I kind of understand, looking back, what he's talking about. Breaking into 2 means the character makes a choice that moves the story from Act 1 to Act 2. And the same thing with Break into 3. The character makes another important decision, which then moves the story from Act 2 into Act 3. But it wasn't really explained that way, and I was really confused. So it's another reason I wouldn't recommend this, especially to beginners, because it can kind of confuse you if you're not already familiar with that kind of thing. With all these issues in here with Save the Cat, like characters should create empathy, not just likability. An act break doesn't really mean anything. It's actually about character choices, and cookie cutter plots and beat sheets are really problematic, especially if you're doing it in a formulaic way rather than an organic way, and having specific events, story events happen on certain page numbers is being really weird, and then the whole like double mumbo jumbo metaphysical mix-up TM. With all these issues in here, you might think, well, should I even read Save the Cat? Is there anything good in it? Why do you even still have it, Carl? There's really some good gems in here. I would say the two things that I think are most helpful is how he explains log lines and how he explains story genres, okay? So if you are confused about log lines and you really want to get into how log lines work and how do I make a log line and how do I pick an idea for my movie, then reading the opening chapters of the books can really help you, especially with the whole log line thing. Second of all, my favorite part about this book is how he explains story genres, okay? He doesn't focus on an audience genre. I coined it, you saw it here first, audience genre. He doesn't focus on audience genres like sci-fi or horror or film noir or something like that. Instead, he focuses on the type of story as an expression of what that story's genre is from a storyteller's perspective. You've got Dude with a Problem, and Monster in the House, and Superhero, and Institutionalized, and Why Done It, Full Triumphant, Buddy Love, all these kind of things. Once I really understood these, which at first I didn't, but then the more I kind of got exposed to it, the more I was like, oh, this is actually really helpful. Not just categorize movies I've already watched, but especially in the outlining process of developing a story idea. I think not only how am I going to write this logline, but what story genre is this going to be? So if you want to learn more about that, then I definitely recommend that you check this book out. And that's one of the main reasons why I still have this book, even though, I don't always recommend it as the big, shining beginner opus that a lot of people talk about it as. So, yes, I think you should still read it. Yes, I think you should still get it if you don't already have it, but just kind of read it with not just a grain of salt, but a ton of grains of salt. And like I said, it's really those few opening chapters that I think are the most useful. If you want to get your very own copy of Save the Cat, or you want to get it for somebody else, then I recommend you do so on bookshop.org. I've got a link down below where you can get it. So the reason why I recommend Bookshop, in addition to me being just an affiliate, so you can support the channel by getting the book and it doesn't cost you anything else. In addition to that, Bookshop in particular, over a huge company like Amazon, actually supports local independent bookstores. So every portion of the proceed of the book goes to an independent bookstore, and if you want to support a particular independent bookstore in your area, you can even select that bookstore on their map, and then when you buy Save the Cat, those proceeds will go to that bookstore in particular, and you can keep these special businesses open. So get Save the Cat on bookshop.org, click the link below, and support independent bookstores. There you have it. Now, let me know in the comments if you have any questions about everything I discussed, and help other screenwriters that you know by sharing this video with them. And if you are ready to take action and finally get your screenwriting career off the ground, then click the link below and take my free mini course called How to Launch Your Screenwriting Career. In less than 35 minutes, I'll give you the 3 keys to success that you need in order to become a working screenwriter. See you there. That you'll ever need. Stop scratching the carpet. Okay, Lupin. Whatever you do, don't read this book. The book's fell over. Whatever you do, Lupin, whether you've read this book before or not. Again with the carpet. Come on, man. He wants attention. So, what am I trying to say, Lupin? We have to save the cat, and I'm saving the cat. I'm trying to save the cat. No, don't go. Don't go. He was sleeping and he didn't want me to mess with him.